What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about the overall market in Tesla. Now, this could actually cause Tesla to once again try to get another attempt to the upside very soon. I'm going to break down what is also going on with some earnings as we have some massive earnings coming out for the week. I'm going to actually tie all of this together and give you guys my price prediction going forward. But before I break anything down about Tesla, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 2 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 1.28% for the day, getting a nice bounce as I predicted. And the real question is, will Tesla continue to push up, or will we pull back just a little bit going forward? And a lot of this will depend on earnings coming out and also some big data. But for the really short term, there's a good chance that Tesla could make an attempt to continue pushing. I'm going to show you guys exactly why that is. But first, let's talk about some earnings. Now, when it comes to earnings, just as a reminder, for Monday, we have Coca-Cola, First Republic Bank, the Bank of Hawaii, and also Credit Suisse. That's going to be very important for how the market reacts. And I can't really predict this perfectly, but I do want to talk about the technicals a little bit later. For Tuesday, we have Verizon, Microsoft, Alphabet, aka Google, UPS, McDonald's, and a bunch of other ones. I expect the reaction to a lot of these to actually happen more on Wednesday because big tech is actually announcing earnings after the market closes on most of these days. So expect the reaction more on like the Wednesday side. And then for Wednesday, there's some big earnings coming out in the morning from Hilton to Boeing, but the bigger days are going to be Meta and also Roku after the market closes. So expect another reaction to them once again by the time we get to Thursday. For Thursday, by the time the market closes, we have Amazon and Intel. Those are going to be the biggest ones for the day, and expect the reaction for Friday. So big earnings are coming out through Tuesday and going into like a Thursday, and the biggest reactions are going to come on Wednesday through Friday. Make sure you are ready for this for the big tech earnings. Now, as far as data goes for the economy, I just want to let everyone know that the data coming out is not too significant for Monday or Tuesday. Not super significant, just some housing data, some housing permits data. But for Wednesday, it becomes a little bit more significant as we have some crude oil data and also some mortgage data. And then for Thursday, it becomes even more significant as we actually have initial jobless claims and GDP growth numbers. Those are going to be very important. They will affect the market, in my opinion. We are going to react to this as well before the market opens. Then Friday is going to be a big day. We have PCE data coming out. That's going to be massive for the Fed's policies. It's going to incentivize the Fed to either pause or continue to raise rates even more. And once again, this will affect them big time because you have to consider the fact that when CPI came out, core was actually hotter than the normal CPI. We might see the same thing for the PCE report. And if we get something like that, might not be the best for the stock market. So be very careful by the time we get to Friday, but we'll see what the data gives us before the market opens. I think we also have some Fed speakers on that day, but nothing too big, I would say, later on during the day. Most of the data is coming out in the morning. But once again, for the data side, I would say Thursday and Friday are going to be big days for data. And once again, from Wednesday through Friday are going to be the biggest reaction days to earnings. So remember those days in your head. Be ready for lots of volatility in the markets, for SPY and QQQ, which will affect Tesla. And make sure you are open-minded for anything that's a possibility. Now, as far as SPY goes, the option chain is not too crazy for this week. We actually have very few options compared to last week from Monday through Wednesday. However, what this tells me is that when the options chains are very slim like this, we tend to see more of the 0-day to expiration options being open that can actually cause very big intraday hedging and lots of volatility. Now, looking at the fact that we have low put to call ratios for Monday through Wednesdays, they're not as high as like 2 or like 3 like we saw from before, but they're around like the 1.21 to 1.37 area. This is opening us up for a little bit more downside potential, and this actually makes the market makers okay with a little bit of downside if it actually comes to that. That does not guarantee it, but it is just a possibility, and the market makers are actually going to become a little bit more lenient if that ends up being the case. However, by the time we get to Friday, it becomes crazy once again, and the market makers might try to hold us up. Now, as far as Tesla goes, max pain for the week is $170. And also, put to call ratio is only 0.75. Now, I don't really see this being too crazy because there's only 100,000 puts expiring for the week and only about 200,000 calls expiring. Nothing too crazy. Tesla's kind of in the middle between very close to where max pain is, and also we're very balanced right here. I believe it's very likely that even if Tesla does pull back a bit, it's going to make an attempt to get closer to max pain this week and try to push up a little bit more. Now, one of the things I mentioned in my previous videos, outside of the news involving Cathie Wood, was the fact that Tesla has been hiking their prices again. This is once again a good news for investors. And we did see a positive reaction to this news. Tesla knows that once again, too many price cuts does not always benefit them in every way, shape, or form. I know their goal is to incentivize more and more buying, but if they do raise prices, if they do commit acts like that, what that basically does is it tells investors that, hey, there is still demand for Teslas. They're able to raise prices and they're not actually losing as much confidence as many investors had initially thought. Now, Tesla also reported they have a new trip planner, which is available in their app. Once again, this could help plan your trips out if you just go into it and set them up. If you actually want to look at where on earth the charging stations are, this could help you up very, very well. And I think this is a very cool feature. I'm not sure if this was actually available before. I did hear about this being a feature, but anyways, it's a very, very cool feature anyways. And I just want to let you guys know about this. Tesla just reported this just a couple of days ago. But anyways, looking at some data, we're actually seeing some good news for Tesla investors. The US inventory levels are continuing to drop, meaning that ever since Tesla announced the sixth price cut before they did raise rates a little bit more, we're actually seeing more and more of these Teslas being bought up again, which is showing us signs of demand going up. We also are getting very close to May, and we do have a tendency of seeing more people buying cars around that period, especially when we get closer to like Memorial Day. But anyways, we had about 606 amount of Teslas that were making up their inventory levels. That's for the total listing. And then it has dropped all the way down. I think it's now below 400. So that's a very good sign for Tesla. The buying is coming up again, especially as we get closer to the summer. That's a very, very good sign for us. This could once again help their numbers for Q2. I really hope this number continues to just fall as the buyers come in again and again. Now, as far as Tesla goes, one good thing is the fact that the volume did decrease. Why is that good? Because we were actually getting 200 plus million in volume, and Tesla was just tanking and tanking and tanking during that time. So we were selling off on high volume with lots of selling pressure. That selling pressure has alleviated. It's not as crazy as before. That's a good sign now, because now that Tesla is actually responding positively to the volume, we have some potential to either hold or continue to push up now, especially if we get even more volume off another piece of news. This is good news for Tesla, and I do anticipate Tesla to actually see some decent volume, at least going into this week. The short volume has actually dropped a bit as of Friday to about 50.17%. That's a good sign. Once again, we're not seeing as much shorting relative to the price, and we're not seeing as much manipulation. On top of that, as far as the news goes, guys, there are a couple of other headlines I just wanted to mention. The Google co founder actually sold a large part of his Tesla holdings to set up a nonprofit, but this did happen a couple of days ago, so it's nothing like too significant. At the same time, though, it's very important to look at these headlines. There was a negative piece of news from yesterday saying, is Tesla stock heading for $85? When it comes to targets like that, Tesla going back to $100 and things like that. I could see that happening during the recession. I could see that happening in the future. But right now, in the current state, I don't see Tesla crashing down that low just yet. I think it has more time to rebound, try to hold up, try to gain more strength and some buyers right back before we do start to see more bearish price action as the recession develops. But I just want to make that clear, guys. I'm not a total bull for like the medium term. I do see some potential downside for the markets in like the month of May. But for the long term, I'm still extremely bullish on Tesla. I'm super, super bullish. I'm going to be buying the dips like crazy, and I believe it's going to soar to the moon. Now, some people have criticized Kathy Wood for her claims. That is completely fine. There's no guarantee she's correct about the claims she made. But there's a good chance she could be either close to being correct or even she may even be correct if Tesla does end up ripping as high as she thinks it does. But even if she's half right, like I mentioned before, she has a $2,000 price target for the next 5 years. Even if she's half right and Tesla only goes to like 1,000 in the next 5 years, that is still a crazy, crazy return on investment, especially if Tesla does end up dropping down to the levels people are talking about, like 100, 140. Crazy, crazy, crazy return on investment in just a couple of years for the stock, heavily outperforming the market as Tesla will do it when it starts to squeeze in the future. Now, as far as the data goes, on a couple of days worth of data, we could actually see about 32 plus million Tesla shares being shorted on 420 basically, and then on 421 we saw about 17 million. So a lot of shorting was going on to smack Tesla down, lots of manipulation, and they were just hammering Tesla down. It was just insane how the shorts love to pile in. And we might see some of these shorts actually cover a little bit, just a tiny bit that can actually help the share price push up if we do get a nice move on Tesla. I don't think it's going to be a massive short squeeze, but I do believe there's some potential for it, just a bit. Now, Tesla has a tendency of being green 53% of the time on Mondays, and Tuesdays tend to be green only about 50% of the time. We do have a tendency of doing very well on Mondays. We also tend to perform very well. By the third hour of the day, we tend to do a little bit better, and then by the time we get to the fourth and fifth hours, we do a lot better during that time frame. Then during the second to last hour, Tesla tends to perform very well too. So make sure you remember these hours. This could actually affect how Tesla moves, especially if you're trying to trade it. April tends to be a good month for Tesla. Tesla was doing well in the beginning, but then we did actually get a big rug pull after earnings. And I still believe that the big drop Tesla had was an exaggeration. I don't believe that Tesla should have dropped that hard. And a lot of it happened once again because of the shorts. Remember, 32 plus million shares were short on just that day alone. The day before it was 19 million. The day after it was 16 million. It's almost twice the shorting pressure as usual. Now, going forward, I just want to note that Goldman Sachs has come out just a few days ago and they're saying buy Tesla. Truist Securities is saying to hold Tesla instead of buy it. Barclays is saying Tesla is going to outperform the market, and a bunch of other companies are saying Tesla will likely outperform us. So most analysts are still more in favor of the bulls right now, saying to buy into Tesla. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. It's just that their words do affect the sentiment for Tesla. Price price ratio is dropping pretty hard. I do expect this to actually hold around this level, just like how it bounced here. Maybe try to bounce a little bit as Tesla should start to base very close to where it's at. Now, let's just quickly go over the charts. I'm going to try to make this part a little bit shorter than usual. As far as Tesla goes, there's a possible inverse head and shoulders developing right here, and it does have some potential to try to push up. We have this MACD crossover on the PPO right here, the MACD crossover with the signal line, and we had a bullish divergence that developed if you actually bring up the extended hours. Now, what I am seeing though is there is some potential for a bit of a pullback depending on how earnings go for Monday. So Tesla might actually start off a little slow for the day. It could actually retest this 163.5 to about 164 area, but I'm anticipating that it's going to try to hold up quite nicely, and it's going to eventually try to continue to push up to 170 this week. Now, this could also depend on earnings if it does not happen early. So it's either going to happen as soon as like Monday or Tuesday. If it takes a little bit longer for Tesla to get the bounce, then it could happen later on thanks to earnings. But that could be a little bit more capricious. But I still believe the odds favor Tesla continuing to push up and trying to break 170 very, very soon. On top of that, I just want to note that we do have this bullish structure. We have a very, very nice looking MACD with very, very strong momentum for Tesla right now. Our RSI is gaining strength. And then on the 4 hour time frame, we're on the verge of getting another crossover right here. Once again, looking nice. This does not guarantee it's going to fly, all the way up to 200 or 250 or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that the technicals look like they're bouncy. They look like Tesla wants to bounce and continue going, but this is just a temporary move because I believe by the time we get to like May, there will be more downside coming to the market eventually, and that will drag Tesla down later on. Right? I'm talking about May, maybe even going into June. But before that time comes, okay, we could have more upside coming, and I do believe the odds favor it for Tesla. Now, I also want to note that we have some resistance around this 170 area to 172.5. Tesla could try to retest this area and start chopping a bit. If we break above it, I'm going to be watching this 174 zone followed by 180 if it does actually break that high. But we don't want to talk too much about super high levels first. Let's first try to get to 170. I do believe Tesla will do that. It might pull back first and then try to get that bounce, but I do believe it will eventually try to get there this week. Now, if Tesla ends up failing because of an unexpected piece of news or something crazy, we have to be watching 165. If that fails, watch 163 on Tesla. Very important level. If 163 fails, then we have some support around the 160 range. This range right here is where we have our support. Once again, anything can happen in the markets. Be prepared for anything, but I'm just saying be prepared for what's most likely to come. And that is a slight pullback followed by another big bounce to the upside. Now, I do believe Tesla will end up going to this 170 area this week. Like I said, I still stand by that. I am predicting that. And I do believe it's going to continue to actually help the QQQ hold up. Now, when it comes to SPY, though, it's very important to note that SPY isn't a channel. It's just going back and forth and back and forth. It is holding above the channel quite nicely, but it has been getting rejected off this resistance line. So the odds favor that we get a slight rejection. We see this thing actually pull back a little bit. We might actually get a retest of like this 410 to 411 zone. And we'll see if this holds. If it holds above 410, we're in good hands. If it fails, if we break below 410, that could become quite bearish and we could end up coming all the way down to this 408 area. What do I think is going to happen? My guess or my prediction is going to be that we likely see a pullback, but we actually hold up quite nicely and we chop around a bit. And if earnings are pretty decent, we could actually try to get another breakout later on. We could make our way back to this 415 area. Now, if we do get a breakout, right, that actually gives me two possibilities, and that could be one of them playing out. So, what are the two possibilities for the market I'm seeing? I'm seeing that the stock market or SPY is most likely going to either chop around first, and if earnings are very bad, we just start downtrending, then CPI, the FOMC meeting, and etc., cause a big pullback by the time we get to May. That's the first possibility. The second possibility, which is also very possible, is the market holds up for the time being. Maybe we pull back a little bit. It's just a small pullback, a few dollars, and we just continue to hold up. And we eventually break above this almost as if it's a bull flag. And the market keeps going for that 418 to 420 level, and we top around there. And then we get the pullback later on. Both of those are equally possible, but so far there's no confirmation of either. But the odds are favoring us holding up for the time being and then reacting to some very big data. I still think we could get the breakout, but we might see some downside beforehand, and we have to be very open minded. I just want to note what my two main bigger possibilities are. I am seeing downside eventually coming, whether we get the breakout to the upside or not, or if we just trade sideways. Eventually, there will be downside by the time we come to like May, and I think it's very likely. But anyways, before that time comes, the market could try to hold up, maybe even break out. We'll see how it goes depending on earnings. Make sure you watch some important levels. The dollar is not confirming anything. It's just trading sideways. If the dollar breaks to the upside, that's going to become bearish for us. If not, if the dollar starts continuing to just chop around and tank, the market could continue to hold up quite nicely. Not really too much on the daily. We do have a bullish divergence on the weekly chart, but not on the daily. So it could take a while for that to play out. We need more confirmation first. For Coinbase, and I'm just going to go really fast through these now. I do apologize if I'm talking too fast. There's a possible bullish divergence I actually saw on this that developed. This tells me that Coinbase might try to get a bounce. It might come down to 58 first and then try to bounce, and that's very likely. If we're bullish, a break above 61 will take this thing all the way up to closer to the 50 EMA around 63 to 65. If we're bearish, a break below 58 will take this thing down all the way down to about the 54.67 area. What do I think is going to happen? The odds favorite coming down and then trying to make an attempt to bounce. For Neo, this is likely going to cool off a little bit, forming an inverse head and shoulders. You can see it on a smaller time frame, and then it's going to likely pull back first and then try to make a bounce, try to retest 8.5. It does like to base around this $8 level, and as long as earnings are not horrible, I do believe Neo has the potential to retest 8.5. If it breaks it, it could fill the gap and get closer to 9, but first we have to see how it performs around 8.5. For Microsoft, Microsoft is kind of in the middle. It might pull back a little bit and retest this 2.8 three zone, and then it might get a nice bounce and a bit of a push up as we approach earnings, because Microsoft has earnings, I believe, on Tuesday. That's going to be very important. Let me just double check that for 1 second. Yep, Tuesday after the market closes, Microsoft has earnings. Very important. We do have a tendency of pushing before the big reports come out. So I think Microsoft might start off a little weak and then try to push up a little bit and try to get back above 288. For the QQQ, this may be dictated by Tesla again. It's likely going to continue to trade sideways. It's doing something very similar to SPY, but looking not as strong. It's actually continuing to just chop around. It's actually in a channel in the 1 hour time frame. I believe it's most likely going to pull back just a little bit, but then it's going to try to hold. Depending on how earnings goes, it could actually get one more push up before the big drop around like May, or it might just drop from here. It's got to be one of those two. In my opinion, I just think it's going to continue to channel around. You can see the channel forming right here. It's likely just going to continue to be stuck in this channel for the time being, and we are going to react to earnings. I'm anticipating it to pull back to about 314, try to bounce, and then try to get right back up to this 316 area, trade pretty flat for the time being, and we are going to react to some big news. For the VIX, this thing is once again a little bit in the red, no true confirmation of a breakout just yet, but we are trying to base around this 16 level. So the VIX is gaining some strength. In my opinion, if it breaks below this 16 level, the market's going to continue to push up, or the market's going to cause that to happen, basically. And if this thing ends up getting the breakout, that's going to become bearish for the stock market, or the market is actually going to be causing that, of course. But in my opinion, there's no confirmation of a breakout yet. And that's why the technicals are still in the middle. We'll see what this thing does. It looks like it's going to actually chop around, maybe retest the lower 16s, and we'll see if this thing gets a bounce or not. But for now, I do believe it might try to bounce initially, right? We might initially try to get a bounce and then come down to retest that area, meaning the market might actually cool off a little bit before getting a bit of a bounce. Amazon has earnings on Thursday. That's going to be very important. Amazon might cool off a little bit, approaching earnings to retest 105, but as long as it holds 105, it's not going to come down to fill the gap at 104. I mean, if it fails at 105, that could happen. But then after that, I do see Amazon potentially continuing to push up as it approaches earnings, and it's going to make a big reaction after that. For Nvidia, this thing is likely going to come down just a little bit, retest this 270 area, maybe a little lower, and then try to hold up. And then it might get a nice bounce and a continuation to the upside as we have a possible inverse head and shoulder. And right here, we actually formed a bullish divergence right here going forward. So it might cool off a little bit, then try to make another attempt for 275. But I do see this thing getting tighter and tighter. I also believe Nvidia is going to get rug pulled. It's going to come crashing down later on by the time we get to May. It needs a little bit more time, but until then, guys, just be very patient with it. Apple is likely going to pull back just a little bit more. I might pull back just a little bit to retest this 163 area, but we're about to get this crossover on the MACD. So I do see it just chopping around a lot, maybe remaining between the 1 hour 50 EMA and the 200 EMA. I think it's just going to remain between there for a while. Pull back to this 163 area to 164. Get a bounce and try to push up for 165 and just go back and forth for the time being before it reacts to very big news. The last thing I'm going to talk about just to end this video is going to be the 10-year treasury yield. This looks like it's going to try to push up to fill this gap, which could be bearish for the stock market. But if it is forming head and shoulders, then it could push up and then get a big reaction and just end up coming down. If that's the case, that tells me the stock market might cool off a little bit, but then continue to hold up if this thing does not get the breakout. If it breaks 36 and it just keeps flying, then that's it. The market is likely going to see more downside. Make sure you're ready for that just in case, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's just going to push up a little bit, then just start trading sideways and maybe even cool off a little bit, depending on what happens to the markets. So what does this all mean for Tesla? Tesla is most likely going to just cool off a little bit, maybe retest this 163.5 to 164 area, then try to bounce. And we're most likely going to see Tesla try to get back above 170 later on during this week. It could happen as soon as Monday, but I would aim for a little bit later. But I do believe the technicals are looking a lot better for Tesla, and we did have a bullish divergence developing right over here, and there's no confirmation of it not playing out anymore. I believe it's most likely going to continue to play out, and Tesla should get above 170 very soon, in my opinion. All right, guys, that's my prediction. Thank you all so much for listening. The last thing I just want to note is I have some merch for you guys if you're interested in buying anything. It's either above or below the comment section. I also have the Webull link down below in the description. If you want those 12 free stocks, the the offer ends in just 2 days. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular weekend. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.